Hey everybody, it's Colleen, and this video is to introduce you to thought models and how to use them as a self-coaching tool so that you can solve really any problem in your life. It simplifies problems because it filters out all the chaos and assumptions and negative thinking and bias that we have so that you can just get down to the root cause. It's really, this tool is the key to creating results in your life that you might right now not imagine are even possible. As you use the model, you'll begin to see that you have the power within you to choose what results you create in your life. And that is how you change your entire life to be exactly what you want it to be. It's work. It's one thought at a time. Imagine weeding a garden with a bunch of thistle weeds, and one at a time you pull them out and get down to the root of it. So this video is an overview of how to identify the unintentional thoughts that are really creating your reality. Now, I will cover in the next video how to use this model to create new thoughts. But first, take your time and really process this before jumping ahead. Because as you incorporate this model into your everyday issues, you'll start to develop a keen sense of your own power and really honestly look forward to figuring out which thoughts are your biggest obstacle. Using this model will become second nature. And once you master it, then backloading new thoughts into a desired model will be much easier. But first, you really have to deal with the fact that when you start paying attention to your thoughts, you might not like what you're finding. But don't rush to judge your thoughts or change them immediately because your thoughts they're just thoughts. So instead, practice being compassionate with yourself, with what you're thinking and what you're feeling, because awareness really is the first and biggest step towards change. Thought models are a tool that help you learn how to manage your mind. And as we all know, our thoughts are crazy. We just incessantly think the same things over and over. And so this allows you to slow your thought process down and get in there and, replace the code. If you think of a computer program, you delete certain thoughts, and it takes time and it takes repetition. But in time, you do learn first that you can manage your mind, and then with practice you develop more and more ability to do so quicker. But the thought models really allow you to see how your thoughts have a direct impact on the way you're perceiving reality, and they allow you to explore the relationship between what you're thinking and what you're feeling and how you're acting. And then, of course, how those actions are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. So learning how to create what you want on purpose by managing your mind is truly the keys to the kingdom. It's absolute freedom. There are 5 elements of the thought model, and often, like in coaching, I'll refer to them as the C line, the T line, the F line, the A line, the R line. So just for future reference, do note that sometimes there's some shorthand in the way we speak about it. But the 5 components are the circumstance, the thought, the feeling, the actions, and the results. And going deeper into that, what you're going to begin to see is how circumstance, which is always neutral, triggers a thought. And so you interpret the circumstance. It's bad or good, or right or wrong, or helpful or harmful. That thought produces a feeling: fear, anxiety, anger, all the good ones. And then we behave, we take action because of the way we feel. And just as important with the actions we take are the actions we don't take. Inaction also is an action. And those actions cause the results that we're seeing. So we begin to take responsibility for the way we feel, because the way we feel is the result of what we're thinking. So saying that someone else made me mad or someone else hurt my feelings, those sorts of things They're a great way to think about it, but are those really serving you? When you understand that if someone hurts your feelings, it's because you had expectations, you had a thought that wasn't met, and that your disappointment is a result of your thoughts and not someone else's behavior, it's really powerful. Or if, arguments with your partner and your partner says to you that you're no good managing money, or, you're frivolous and you don't care. Well, if you didn't believe that that statement had some truth to it, you wouldn't care. If your partner said you wear purple socks every day, you'd be like, yeah, no, I don't. And you'd move on. But when someone says something to us that we perceive as true, or that we fear is true, or that we don't want to be true, and it triggers an emotional reaction, then we start behaving from that fear or rejection or hurt or whatever. And then these models are going to help us see how that thought and the feeling that we had ultimately creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the first thing that we do is we identify the circumstance. And this can be hard because so-and-so hurt my feelings, not the circumstance. Okay, the circumstance is a neutral statement. It does not reveal positive or negative interpretation. It's just, there's no emotion to it at all. It's basic facts. It should be admissible in a court of law. And especially when you're dealing with conflicts with another person, would the person that you are in conflict with, would they agree with your circumstance? So the importance of doing this is for us to begin to see events in our lives and circumstances in our lives as neutral. It's not to exonerate other people's responsibility. It's just for us to see that we have a choice in how we interpret other people. And just like the example of, your spouse saying something negative to you, if he said the same thing to someone else and they thought something different and felt something different and they had a different reaction, well, different things would happen. So identifying a neutral circumstance is really important because that's what you're working with as you move forward. So some examples would be that things cost money. And a bad circumstance would be something like, I don't have enough money to do what I want. Well, that's subjective. That's relational. So it's just that things cost money. It's not about your relationship to the money. Another thing would be people say words. So, ineffective circumstance would be that somebody hurt my feelings, or somebody was being a bully, or something like that. Not to say that that can't happen, but in the circumstance, we're only identifying the neutral, which is why a lot of times circumstances have to be pretty simple, like people say words, or so-and-so said. One thing I like to do to get around the neutral and make it actually mean something is to quote somebody. So if my husband says something like, I don't think you're helping me enough, then I just put that in quotes. But again, would he sign off on what I said? So taking the time to really look at what was said and make sure that you're not projecting or changing it or altering it to kind of match your thought about it is really important. Another topic that I see a lot is, my doctor prescribed medication. Like the circumstance wouldn't be that I want to take medication or I don't want to take medication, or medications are bad or good. They're just neutral. So it's a neutral statement to say my doctor prescribed medication. Another thing, if you're contemplating relationship issues, to say, if you're worried about getting a divorce or breaking up or something like that, just identifying the situation you're in. I am married. I am in a relationship, things like that. Try to isolate down to the crux of the situation. So, if you've already made the decision to move and there's something going on about that, then I am moving. And that's where the circumstance actually can be a little challenging, because what is the neutral circumstance? Saying something like, I wake up in the middle of the night every night. That's a little inflammatory. That's obviously somebody might interpret that as a negative thing. Instead, just keeping to the basic facts. I woke up at 1:15 a.m. And not extrapolating anything onto that is really important. So when you make your circumstance, just check it. Would everyone agree with this? Is there any way you can be even more neutral than you already are? And then check it finally by reading it. And when you read the statement, does it feel neutral or does it start to get you jacked up? Because you want just the basic facts. It's not supposed to elicit any sort of emotion. Moving on to the thought line, your thoughts are an interpretation of the circumstance. It's whatever you think it means. You're attaching meaning to what's happening. It's your story. What did happen, what is happening, what will happen. And it can be really hard to kind of narrow this down to one phrase. So for complicated circumstances or when you're newer to this process, start with a thought download. Get a journal or a piece of paper and just write out all of your thoughts about the circumstance. And then as you go back through and review that, pull out the one that is perhaps most inciting. It's creating the biggest reaction. And don't be afraid to choose one over the other. First of all, you can do multiple thought models. But honestly, in these circumstances, it often isn't even necessary because all the thoughts kind of lead to home, if you will. So just drop your expectation that somehow you pick the right thought and instantly there's going to be clarity. That can happen and it does happen, but sometimes you have to do these and then sit with it for a while. Like, really? Like, I'm really doing this to myself? And when you're so attached to a belief, it's difficult to make room for the fact that something else could be true. So when you're writing the thoughts, do avoid, connector statements of and, but, because. All of that's going to come up in the results. Just keep it to one basic phrase that is the thought. And then remember that thoughts are just words in your brain. You can think anything you want. I mean, there are people that think that that some people are actually lizard people and those people are controlling the planet. And if you repeat those words in your brain, lizard people control the planet, well, you just thought that. But if it doesn't resonate and create a physical response with a feeling, then it's a harmless thought. So just understanding that any thought you think isn't true, it's just a word in your brain. It's not true unless you believe it. And all of your thoughts are a collection of your ideas, your assumptions, interpretations of things, your opinions, your subjective bias, your cultural beliefs, your societal beliefs, your unique perspective, all of it. So the thought is just your perception of circumstances as being good or bad, right or wrong, helpful or hurtful. And a lot of that is subconscious programming. You're not actively choosing to think that or have those beliefs. So bottom line is when you have a thought and you choose it, so you've done your download and you've chosen your thought phrase, now then you have to see if it resonates. Do you have an emotional reaction? So choose the thought from your downloads that gives you the biggest bang for your buck. And then the next step is to ask what feeling comes up for you. And with this, it's important to just choose one word that describes a physical sensation in your body. So saying you're frustrated and angry and confused, that's too much. That's where, you just want to break this down with one circumstance, one thought, and one feeling. And then you can follow up with other models, but, also give it time because these are very deep. So sometimes it doesn't matter that you're angry and confused. Just pick one that for this circumstance allows you to move forward. And when you have read the thought multiple times, before you choose the feeling, check in with your body. Notice the sensation. Ask yourself, how do you know what it is you're feeling? How are you recognizing the difference between anger or frustration? And there is a feeling list, and I've got a little screenshot on here, but don't be afraid to look at the feeling list and really dig in deep to isolate the feeling that you're having. It's just more informative, and honestly, the exercise of tuning into your body is very, very valuable. So the deeper you go with this, the better and deeper your results will be. And then moving into the action step, you have to identify all the things that you are doing or not doing, or saying or not saying, or thinking or not thinking, as thoughts or actions too, because of your feelings. So avoiding things is also an action. And here you don't have to be simple and short. Go deep and wide. You can go back at some point, and then if you've written so much that your actions are actually related to another thought and feeling, you can pull those out later. But go ahead and just go through everything that you can think of, and don't think about it in chronological order. Start to connect all the dots that are hours and even days later because you feel rejected. How is that impacting you in the evening? How is that impacting you in different locations? So questions to consider are, how are you interacting with others? And think about if it's rejection that you're feeling, how is that showing up not with the person you rejected, but at the grocery store or at work or with your partner or a friend? And then, how are you showing up? Are you showing up, kind of reserved or overly obnoxiously crazy funny? Or, how are you showing up in different places of your life? So it's not just the circumstance that happened, but that feeling may be resonating for a long time. So think about your work and home and social circles. And then ask yourself, how are you treating yourself? If you, again, feel rejected, then how are you punishing yourself for that? Are you telling yourself that you're stupid and that you don't deserve love? Are you, turning to emotional eating? Are you making, risky sexual decisions? Are you not doing your workouts? What are you doing and how are you treating yourself? And that includes internal conversations you're having as well as external. And then if you notice there's a lot of ruminating, those internal thought cycles that drive us all crazy, when you're ruminating, also consider what you're not focusing and thinking on and what you're not doing. So what is that ruminating keeping you from? And then finally, just check for logical connection and weed out any actions that you are taking that are a result of another feeling. And so, simplify it if you need to. And then finally, start looking at the consequences of your actions and the results that you're creating. Because the whole point of this is that what we think we are passively observing as happening to us is actually something that we are actively creating with our own thoughts. The results should actually prove that your thought is true. It's like a roadmap from how to get to point A to point B. When you lay out, the thought, the feeling, the actions, it should be a pretty clear linear result, because our thoughts are generating our feelings and our feelings are driving our behavior and our actions are reinforcing what we believe, the self-fulfilling prophecy. Remember that if somebody says something to you and it doesn't resonate, like you always wear purple socks, or I think you might be a terrorist, a secret terrorist, if it doesn't resonate, it doesn't make any difference to you. Your belief feels true only because you think it's true on some level. Our beliefs filter our reality. They determine what we're paying attention to and what we perceive is happening. This is known as cognitive bias. The more you are looking for something, the more you're seeing it. And the more you're not aware of other possibilities, the more they don't exist. I equate this to going morel hunting in the woods. If I don't know what a morel looks like, or I don't know the types of trees and foliage it grows in, and I just walk into the woods looking for morels, I ain't gonna find them. I have to have a framework in my head of what that looks like. And it's the same thing. If you are looking for signs of rejection, you're gonna find it. And vice versa, if you are looking for signs of acceptance and love, you're going to find it. It may not look like maybe what you expected, but if you're looking for it, you'll be like, oh, yeah. See, our brain gives us what we want to see. There's this famous video that was made where participants in this psychological study were told to count the number of times this group of people pass the basketball back and forth. And it's really fast moving. And at the end of the video, they're asked, did you see the life-size monkey that walked through there? Some guy in a monkey suit walks through the middle of the passing of the ball back and forth. And people don't see the monkey because they're not looking for it. And so it's a really powerful tool to realize the more you're looking for something, the more the brain rewards you. You know, if I said, hey, look around today and see how many heart-shaped things you could find. Well, if you were actively looking for heart-shaped things, you would find heart-shaped things. And you'd also miss a lot of other things. But it's whatever framework our brain is operating under that is giving us our reality. And what we see is based on what we think we're looking for. So ask yourself some follow-up questions after you finish your thought model and really look at, what are you creating? How are you proving that your thoughts are true? What actions are you taking that are creating the thought and reinforcing that thought? And then ask yourself the most powerful question, are you ready to take responsibility for that? And it's okay if the answer is no. It's okay if you're still projecting blame and hurt and responsibility on somebody else. That means you need to just sit with this for a while and not try to move on too quickly. You might approach it with another thought model, but you might just give it some time because this will percolate in your subconscious. And the way it does that is to continue to ask yourself questions. Does it serve you to feel and think this way? Are you having fun? Is this what you want? You know, carrying the blame. You know, what do they say about anger or hurt or whatever? When you carry anger meant for somebody else, you're poisoning your own vessel. Or when you drink poison meant for somebody else, that, you know, it's causing you your problem. So if you've got toxic emotions that you're attributing to somebody else, or even harder, neutral circumstances, you know, the just a natural disaster or something like that, you have to ask yourself, are you feeling served? And then also ask yourself, what are you getting out of this? You know, what's the payoff for you to kind of exist in victim mode or powerless mode? What's the payoff to keeping yourself stuck and held back with this? Because there is one, and there's no judgment about that. But somehow, you know, there's another fear of moving forward, or of you're afraid to let go of the story because somehow it's serving you. And then also ask yourself, you know, what am I getting out of this pattern? And ask yourself if it is a pattern. You know, is this something where you change the dates and names of the circumstance and it's a recurring theme in your life? You know, that's really fun and interesting to look into. And then if you're tentative about releasing it, just ask yourself, what's the downside? What do you have to lose if you just tried and played with thinking something different? And, you know, ultimately, do you like what your thoughts are creating? Are you having fun in this emotion and this thought pattern? And are you good with where you're at, or are there things you're missing out on because you're stuck here? And then finally, can you see that if you thought differently, you would experience life differently? Is that something that you're ready to look at? Like I said in the beginning, before you jump into, you know, the toxic positive thought of, well, I'll just change my thoughts. Yes, I can see this is all my fault, so I'll just change it. Sometimes it can be that easy, and certainly it gets easier with practice. But for now, just work on some thought models, maybe in different circumstances of your life, and just begin to resonate with it. And the most important thing is to allow yourself to feel the feelings without next just jumping to try to change them. Because we have thoughts about our feelings too. We might be angry, and then we have because of something, and then we have a thought that we shouldn't be angry, and that's a whole nother thought model. And so do some thought models about your thoughts about your feelings, and just spend time, work with this, and start to see how fun it is to apply this kind of walking talking. I don't always sit down and do a thought download. Usually I've got a pretty intense circumstance before I do that. But man, the other day, the guy at the pharmacy, I was standing there talking on my phone. I had exactly 30 minutes to get my medication, and I was talking on my phone, and I wondered if he was ignoring me because I was on my phone, but then I gave him the benefit of the doubt and I kept talking. Well, finally, there's people lining up behind me, and he finally goes, "When you're done with your phone, I will deal with you." And I immediately flushed with embarrassment. And I had this thought of, like, how dare you? I've got 30 minutes. Like, who are you to judge me? And then I thought, I guess I get it, that I am being rude. And ultimately, I was able right there in the mid store. I suffered for about 60 seconds. And then I thought, how do I want to feel right now? And I was like, I just want to be not mad. That's what I want to do. And I immediately shifted into changing my thought. Like, that guy's just doing his job. The end. It is what it is. I don't have to attach meaning to that. So this comes up as a useful tool in so many ways and so many different parts of our lives. So good luck with this. Have fun.